Just last week it was 20 degrees and next week it's snowing, so... Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Emma. As you can see from the title, this is a video about the pros and cons of remote working. But before I jump into that, I'd just like to give a brief background into who I am and sort of explain my experience with remote working. So some of you might know that I graduated from the University of Cambridge last year in July with a degree in English. Shortly after that, I began my graduate job in a communications role. I started work in August last year, so I've been working remotely ever since then. I actually haven't met any of my colleagues in person yet. They are hoping to meet up with everybody in summer when it's safe to do so, but for now it's all just sort of been on like Zoom and Teams video calls and things. But this isn't actually my first time working remotely. Last year, when I was studying for my final year exams, I actually got sent home early from university and spent all of my third term working and revising for my exams from home. So I do have some experience of both studying from home and working from home. And I'd just like to share some of my sort of pros and cons and experience of remote working, how I've found it. Hopefully you'll find this useful. I think it's quite an interesting video to make because the future of work does seem to be changing, and I really think that work is going to keep moving in that direction of remote work. Even when the pandemic sort of lifts and we go back to normal work, if we'll ever return to that sort of idea. I do think that a lot of our working situations will be more of a hybrid situation where we might work some days in the office and some days at home. So if some of you are contemplating taking up a job that might be only remote work or partly remote work, this might be interesting for you to see what it's like before you start. And I think knowing the pros and cons, it can help you have a clearer mindset going into it. And I'd be really interested to hear your experiences of remote working as well, especially spending maybe a whole year or a few terms of school and university working remotely. How have you found that and how have you managed that? With that said, let's get started. I'm going to start with all of the positives first and then I'll move on to the negatives after that. So the first positive that I've really found since working remotely is I can spend longer in bed. I don't need to get up in the morning to do all of my hair and makeup. I don't need to sort of commute to a physical building or physical place. So that drastically reduces the amount of time that I need to take in the morning getting ready. So if I do want to have, another hour in bed, I actually can, which is great. But I actually tend not to use that to sleep. I tend to get up at about 7:30, but use the extra hour and a half that I would normally spend traveling to work or getting ready for work to do fun things that I enjoy. For example, I do enjoy reading in the morning or watching the news or reading the news on my phone. So I do find that I have a lot more time to do those sort of things. And I don't just save time at the start of my day, but also at the end of my day. For me, work finishes at 5:30, but because I don't have to commute back from a workplace to home, it means I can spend that time going on walks or spending time with my family or starting to cook dinner earlier as well. So I found that I save time both at the start and at the end of my routine. I've sort of just touched on this as well, but I can dress more comfortably. I don't have to do my hair, my makeup, or wear a professional outfit like a suit or workwear as you would have to wear in the office. I only really dress more professionally if I know I'm going to have video calls that day or client calls. You don't have to make such a big effort as you usually would if you were going to a physical workspace. Next up, alongside saving time from commuting, you also save money. One thing I didn't realise before starting my grad job or graduating from university is that commuting can be really expensive, whether you're driving to work, taking a train or a bus. These are all the sort of things you have to think about when you start a new job. And I didn't have all the hassle of having to move to a new location. And I didn't have to ask myself questions like, will I need a car? How expensive will petrol be? Will I need to take a train and then a bus to get to my workplace? I sort of just roll out of bed and I'm at my desk. So that's really convenient, and that's definitely a plus side of working from home. Another positive that I've realised since working remotely is that I feel a lot less pressure. I think when you tend to work in group environments or around lots of people, you can often feel like people are watching you or waiting to see what you're going to do and checking in on you all the time. But I feel like my company and my colleagues have given me so much freedom, and they accept that I have a certain level of maturity that I can sort of get on with things myself and they don't need to check in all the time. They've definitely made sure I'm aware that if I need a hand or I have questions, I can get in touch straight away. But I like being left to sort of get on with things and run into my own problems myself without someone constantly asking me how I'm doing. And the pressure's off when you're not around people. You can take a little bit more time to try and understand the work you're doing. You don't feel like there's a pressure to speed up and try and learn it all at once. You can sort of take it step by step, and I found that really helpful. And I think if I was revising for exams, as some of you might be, that I would really appreciate this time to be on my own, have the time to concentrate, and be free of distractions. I suppose that's another point that I'd like to make about working from home. Because you are working from home and you don't have, say, friends or colleagues around you to distract you, it means you can get a lot more sort of focused work done. I do appreciate just being left to sit down, headphones on, and just steam through a task, no distractions, and that is definitely one thing I found helpful. And finally, I really enjoy the more flexible hours. My company are really good for this. It's a lot lighter in the evenings now in the UK. So my manager said to me, if you want to take an hour for lunch instead of half an hour to go on a walk and enjoy the sunshine, feel free to go and do that as long as you make up the hours elsewhere. And that's all based on a trust policy. I don't have to let anybody know the hours I'm doing and what work I'm doing. They just trust that I am adult enough to be responsible for my work, to get it done, to make sure I make up my own hours. And I really love that level of responsibility I'm given and the level of respect that my colleagues and my manager show me. Now, on the flip side of that, there are some negatives that I've experienced of working from home. I often find that it can be harder to separate work life from personal life. For example, my desk is in my bedroom, so I will be working all day at my desk, and as soon as I'm finished, I walk away from that desk and I am in my bedroom. So whereas some people might find that a positive, it can often feel like a negative that you can't leave your work environment because your work is in your living space. And some people do prefer that work-life balance or that work-life separation. I think that's what I really enjoyed about being at university, even though I was technically working from home or working at home. I could walk to my lecture block, I could walk to a different college for my supervisions, and then I'd come back to my home and that would feel like a separate space. Now, I haven't experienced this one myself, but I have heard from other friends that are working from home that their colleagues sometimes expect them to log in outside of work hours because their laptop or their desktop is right in front of them in their home space. They can easily just log on, whereas before, if you were working in an office, you could only access your materials by driving into work and logging in there. I think that's another example of work sort of interrupting your personal life. Obviously, when you work for a company you love, like I do, you don't mind working the extra hours. There are definitely some times I've had to work extra hours and I've never minded at all. I know I can get that time back elsewhere, and I know my company are so flexible with me and they really take an interest in my well-being. So I don't mind working these extra hours to make sure I hit client deadlines and I get all of the work done that I need to get done. But I have heard some horror stories. I think in the news recently, one large company have been making their employees work silly hours, all times of the night. I mean, this is a worst case scenario, but I have heard that they weren't eating or sleeping because there was so much pressure to get the work done. I've never experienced anything like that, but that can be a downside of working from home, especially now when all of your work is at your house, in your home. Now, this is one negative that I have experienced from working from home. It can feel quite lonely or far less social than, say, a university environment or an in-office working environment. As I said, I haven't had the chance to meet any of my colleagues yet, and it would be nice to sort of meet up with them outside of work for a drink or to say hello or to do something fun. When you are just waking up every day, sitting down at your desk, working, finishing, cooking your dinner, going to bed, it can be very isolating. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about my personal experience with this. As I said, last year my university term was cancelled and I had to finish my degree from home. I had to graduate in absence. I didn't sit my exams in person, and we had none of the usual graduation celebrations that I should have had. As a result, I actually decided, once the restrictions had eased, to move back to Cambridge. I still had some friends there who were studying for their master's degrees, PhDs, so I thought it would be a more sociable environment for me to be in. And because I was working remotely, I could choose wherever I wanted to work. There was no physical space I needed to be in. I could work from my room. But obviously, COVID cases got worse and restrictions were put back in place again, and I wasn't able to see all of my friends. They all had to return home again, and I was back to being alone in Cambridge. This meant that I wasn't seeing any friends, I didn't live with family, and I wasn't seeing colleagues every day, so it was a very isolating experience. And I actually did decide to return to my home up in the north and live with my family for the rest of lockdown until the restrictions ease again. After that, I'll sort of reevaluate where I'm going to move again, but for now, I have that choice because I'm working remotely. So that's sort of a positive and a negative in that I can choose to go where I want. But, you know, it can be isolating and I do wish I could see my colleagues in person. Sometimes it might be difficult to motivate yourself to work from home as well. Obviously, you're not surrounded by your colleagues or your university friends or school friends that sort of hold you accountable for getting your work done. It seems to be the case that when you see other people around you doing work, it then inspires you to work as well, or it puts a little bit of pressure on to think, gosh, like he's working really hard, or she's written this whole essay, I should really get a move on and start doing my work. So I think when you're not seeing what everybody else is doing as well, you can often deceive yourself into thinking you've done more or less than you actually have. I'm really good at sort of self-motivation, but I have the opposite problem of, what if I'm not doing enough? What if they expect me to have done more by the time the day is over? So I try to pick up my pace a bit, put more pressure on myself to get it done, and then my colleagues often seem surprised about how much work I've completed in the day. So I think it's really hard to know or judge where you stand in comparison to your colleagues when you're working from home and not in a social environment. Another thing I found difficult is that I'm actually doing less exercise now that I'm working from home. I think I expected I'd be doing more, or at least there'd be more exercise in my routine if I was commuting. For example, when I was at university, I used to walk and cycle to different places, whereas now, because I don't have that journey, I'm not walking anywhere, I'm not leaving my house as much, so I am trying to make a big conscious effort to get myself out where I can. It doesn't help living in the UK when the weather's really bad. Just last week it was 20 degrees and next week it's snowing, so that's all you need to know about the weather here. But I'm really hoping when the summer weather comes in, that might push me to go outside some more, do some more exercise, get some more fresh air, because it's so important when you're cooped up in your room all day trying to work that you go outside. And it can be slightly boring seeing the same four walls every single day. I'm fortunate enough that I have a desk in my room and a nice workspace, but I used to live somewhere else where I didn't have a desk in my bedroom, and it would have been really difficult for me to work from home because I might have been sharing the dining table with my parents or my brother, for example. So I can definitely empathise with the fact that it's not for everybody to work from home, and not everybody has the resources or the space to do that. I hope you found some of these pros and cons useful, whether you're working from home at the moment, or you're contemplating taking a job that involves remote working, or even you might be applying for university and might be considering whether university is for you and if you think you'd be able to motivate yourself to study. And I think you can also take into account from these pros and cons how you can change your routine to make working from home a little bit easier. For example, if you know that you're not going to go outside as often, force yourself to go outside, schedule times where you're going to take exercise. If you know you can't socialise as much because you're not seeing your colleagues in person, make sure to schedule in phone calls with friends. Make sure to meet up with people when the regulations allow you to. Best of luck for everybody else who's in the same situation working from home. Hopefully the situation will change soon and we'll all be able to see one another in person very shortly. But for now, thanks for watching everybody. Bye!